Hello and welcome to my studio. In this video I'm going to show you how I made this image. Photographing a predominantly white subject against a pure white background can create a strong image. However, it also gives some technical challenges. So in this video I'll show you exactly how I did it. Okay, so I'm going to start with the background, and I'm going to use this Profoto 4 by 6 softbox as a background. So I'm just going to move that into position. Now luckily this is on a pantograph, so I can just pull it down into position like this. There. So with that in something like the right height, what I can do now is just spin it round into the vertical, like so. Yeah. I'll just lock that in that position. Now the head that I've got at the back here is a Profoto D2. So it's a mains powered 1000 dual unit. There we go. And this is going to form the background, quite literally. But as it is at the moment, it's a little bit close to where I'm going to put the subject. So I just need to move the whole lot back a bit. So now this is in something like the right position. We might need to fine tune it a little later as we go on. Okay, so I'm using a softbox like this so that it will give me a fairly homogeneous white background when it's properly illuminated. So in order to just check the illumination on this, what I'm going to do is put the subject in place, and then we'll put the camera on and take a few test images. Okay, so for the subject I have these white lilies. So I'll just place that there, something like that. Now this is a reasonably good test for this type of illumination, because if this is too bright, what will happen is it will burn all the sides of the petals. But if this isn't bright enough, then it won't be white. So it's a good balancing act. Okay, so we'll come on to the exposure a little later. So this is what I'll use to capture the images. Full frame digital SLR, 24-70 zoom lens on the front, flash sync trigger on the top. Whole thing is tethered into Capture One software, so it's easy to show the results. Okay, just pop this on the tripod. Alright, so before I actually do any test images, I just want to size up the image and get it in the right place in the viewfinder. So I'll just have a look through the viewfinder. So I'll just zoom that in a little bit. About 50mm to start with, I think. Just about fills the frame with the softbox. And we'll just set the focus. About there somewhere, I think. There we go. Okay, so now with that done, what I can do is just turn the camera on. And with that, the software has recognized the camera. And I can have a look at what settings I've got at the moment. So 100 ISO, 1/250th of a second for the shutter speed, which is the flash sync speed for that camera. And I'm using f8 as an aperture to start with. So with those settings, I'll just grab an image and see what we get with no flash. So you can see from this that there is very little image there, which is a good thing. It means that the flash will be illuminating the subject, not the house lights. Okay, so with that set, next thing to do will be just on an arbitrary energy level, I'll turn on the flash at the back, like so, and we'll just take a test image. Okay, so you can see on that test image that this background light is far too bright, and it has burnt out all the petals on here. So I think initially I'm going to take that down by 3 stops, and we'll see what difference that makes. There we go. Okay, so that's starting to get there, but I still think this is a little too bright. Now the way to tell is to watch the RGB levels which appear at the top of the screen here. And wherever I put the cursor on here, they are all staying very solid. If I go on to something dark, you'll see that they go down, but this means that all this is still too bright. So I'm going to take off another couple of stops. So I'll take 2 stops off, like so, and we'll grab another image. Okay, now this has gone slightly the other way. You can see some of the texture in the front of the softbox, and although I'm getting 250 in places, I'm not actually burning this out to white. So I think I just need to add a stop. So I'm just going to take it up by 1 stop. There we go, that's more or less perfect. It's dropping off ever so slightly at the edges, but everywhere else seems like it's a pure white. Okay, so because of the distance between this and the subject here, it means that I'm not actually illuminating this enough to burn out the edges on the flowers. If we have a very close look at one of those edges, if I just zoom in on the software here, you can see that they are still very distinct. Okay. So that's set the illumination for the background and made a white background. So what we need to do now is illuminate the flowers. So to do that, what I'm going to do is make use of yet another D2 on a C stand. And this one has a 2 foot by 2 foot softbox on the front of it. So we'll just set this up. Okay, so this is going to be going up in the air, so I've put a sandbag on the base of the C stand just to give it a bit more rigidity. We'll just move this up. There. And again, like that. Now the position of this is going to be relatively critical. So just to start with, I'm just going to put it here so that it's predominantly in front of the flowers. So we'll just turn that on. So I'll select the head, turn it on, and at the same time I'll just turn off the backlight for the time being. So at a, again, arbitrary energy level, we'll just give that a bit of a test. Okay, so as far as the exposure is concerned, it's possibly a little burnt out on these particular petals here, but overall I think the quality of the light from that position isn't quite right. I think what I need to do is place the light much more over the top of the flowers, and possibly a little closer. Okay, so I think that's a little better. You can see that this is now more or less over the top of the front part of the flowers, and it's almost certainly in the image. We'll just grab an image just to see what it looks like. Yeah, there you go. So because I've moved it closer, the exposure is way over now, so I'll just need to take that back by a couple of stops. So I'll just take a couple of stops off the energy in that light. So, give that another go. Okay, so that's looking about right. So having done that, what I'll do now is turn the backlight back on. So I just select that, turn the head on. So, and we'll fire them both together. Okay, so this is almost there, I think. If I just zoom in a little, we can have a close look around the image. And yes, I think it's looking quite good in terms of exposure. But the very front of the plant here and the very back is slightly out of focus. So I'd just like a little bit more depth of field. So the easiest way to do that would be just to increase the aperture from f8 to f16. So that's a two-stop increase. So what I'll do is just increase the energy in both of the flashes by 2 stops. Okay, give that another go. There, I think that's worked very well. The exposure looks about right, and if I just zoom into the image, the back's in focus and the front's in focus. Okay, so I think just finally what I might do is just zoom the camera in just to tighten up the shot a little. So I'll just take it from the 50 to the 70 and maybe just reframe that ever so slightly as well, just like that. There we go. Okay, so now I'll just grab an image and we'll see what that looks like. Right, now that's looking very nice. Again, just zoom in, check the edges of the petals. They're all looking pretty good and are still separated from the background. So all that is working very, very well. Okay, so for capturing the image, really that's it. It's just a case of being very careful about the exposure. And if you are careful enough, you should be able to illuminate the white of the foreground image and the background and still separate them. Okay, so we'll just go into Photoshop and do a very small amount of post-production to finish off the image. Okay, so I've opened up the image in Photoshop. Now the first thing I'm going to do is just make a duplicate of the file. So I'm just going to go onto the background layer here and right-click the mouse, ask for a duplicate layer, but I want a new document. So I'll click on New, and we'll just call this White Lily. And just click on OK. That way I have a new document at the top here, so I can close the camera original. Don't need that one anymore. Okay. So with that done, what I will do now is just make a conventional copy of this background, just a normal duplicate layer, like so. So I can do all my editing on this, and I can always go back to the original if I want to. That way it builds in lots of redundancy, which is never a bad thing. Okay, so we just need to check that our white background is actually white, and the way to do that is to use the info panel at the top here. So these RGB values will tell me what the value is at the particular point where the cursor is. So as I move the cursor across the background, you can see that they all stay at 255, which means that the background is a pure white, which is what we want. If, however, I put it on any of the petals, you see that even the very white petals do drop down, which is also what you want, and gives the separation from the background itself. Okay, so generally there's very little to do to this image. It possibly just needs a little bit of tidying up just where some of the pollen has dropped onto the petals. So to do that, what I will do is just zoom into the image. I'll go into 100% and just use the spot removal tool. So I'll just change the size of that, just make it a bit smaller, so it's very soft. Just go over these spots of pollen just to get rid of them. Just move around the image and carry on. I don't want to actually get rid of all of them because I think that will look a little false. But if we get rid of the majority, there we go. So if I just turn the visibility on and off on this layer, you'll be able to see the difference that makes. So that's with all the spots of pollen, and that's without them. So finally, I think just a crop, and we'll be there on this image. So I'm just going to pick a usual ratio to match the video, and that looks pretty good to me, just as it is. So I'm just going to click on the OK, and there we have it. And I think that's made quite a strong image. And by getting the exposure right in the camera, you don't have to do any grading in Photoshop or any other capture software. Okay, well, I hope you enjoyed seeing how I made that image, and if you like watching these sort of things, do click on the other images as they appear, and don't forget to subscribe. Oh, and click the like button. Thank you very much for watching.